Hello, everyone, and thank you for joining us today. I know it's early on the West Coast. I'm sure people will be continuing to log into the meeting, but I think we'll get started. We know you're all very busy. If, like me, during this coronavirus period, you're twice as busy as before, then we especially appreciate you taking the time out of your busy day to join us. We have a very interesting webinar, perhaps one of the most interesting ones I've been involved with, and we hope you find it interesting too and informative. The topic is managing risk in turbulent economic times, and it explores the role of graph analytics in helping everyone, but with focus on the financial service industry, manage risk during the economic downturn resulting from this pandemic. We hope you enjoy the webinar and find it informative. I'm David Ronald. I'm Director of Product Marketing at the company. I think I recently passed my 8th month milestone with the company. As you can see, I have a fairly technical background with focus on artificial intelligence, NLP, telecommunications, and so forth. But much more importantly is today's presenter, Gaurav Deshpande, my esteemed colleague and also Vice President of Marketing and my manager. Gaurav joined Tigergraph in March of 2019. So that's just about 2 years and a month, almost 2 years and 2 months. Prior, he was at IBM for an extended period, 13 years. Prior to that, he was at a company called Trigo, and they were acquired by IBM. Before joining Trigo Technologies, Gaurav was i2 Technologies, where they had a successful IPO. He is a big data analytics veteran, multiple patents in supply chain management and big data analytics. And although it says that here that he is a huge graph head, he doesn't have a big head. He's a very down-to-earth bloke. Just a few housekeeping issues. Your phones are muted. That's standard practice these days, but we definitely want to hear from you. We want this webinar to be as interactive as possible. That way, we feel you'll get more benefit from it. So please don't be shy. Submit your questions. You can do that through the Q&A button or indeed the chat button. We prefer Q&A button and do so at any time. Second, the webinar is being recorded and will be uploaded to our website shortly. That usually means 2 to 3 hours. So check back later today if you want to review part or all of the webinar or want to share with a colleague. And additionally, we will send an email with the URL to the archived section of the website, along with any other materials that Gaurav deems helpful. And last but not least, although this is perhaps no longer relevant, if you do have any issues with Zoom, please contact the panelists. I know that Zoom is being heavily utilized these days, and sometimes technical issues do occur. If you have an issue with Zoom, don't hesitate to reach out to either myself or Gaurav, and we'll do our very best to address them as quickly as possible. So with that, I'm going to pass control of the webinar over to Gaurav.
Thanks a lot, David. Give me just a moment and I'm going to share my screen. First of all, welcome everyone. I hope everybody is keeping safe in this time of COVID-19. We structured this particular webinar mainly because we realized that there were a lot of questions. We have over 30 Fortune 500 companies use Tigergraph currently in production. Many of those are banks, and we get a lot of questions from them. We get a lot of questions from government, regulatory authorities, people who are involved with Federal Reserve, people who are involved with European Central Bank. There is a risk assessment is the word of the day for the banks as well as for the governments. So the reason why we put this together is mainly to help you understand what are the main implications of this current COVID-19 crisis. And then what is the best way to construct a risk management model that will allow you to manage through the risk, because risk is inherent part of life. Without risk, there is no reward. That said, modeling the risk correctly could make the difference between coming out of this particular downturn much stronger or coming out of this downturn as a hobbled economy, either the country economy, the state economy, or the local economy, or global economy as a whole. So let's jump right into two different shocks that have been delivered to the global economy by this particular pandemic. The first one is related to the global demand. So the chart I have on the left is showing the price of West Texas Intermediate oil. This is related to oil futures. So the price per barrel, and you are seeing this chart correctly, the price per barrel last Monday closed at negative 37.63. Now, part of it has to do with the fact that the West Texas oil, when it's taken out of the ground, is stored, and because we are running over with oil in terms of excess oil, all of that oil that's coming out of the ground, people who buy oil futures have to take possession of that in May if they don't have plans to actually sell it. So that's what has caused that particular dip. It's a very unusual situation. For the first time ever in the history, the oil price, the oil futures have closed at $37.63 per barrel. The Brent crude, which is the regular heavier crude, that's also trading in low 20s, which is also a very low price for the Brent crude. In general, that's because there is a massive drop in the consumption of oil, about 10% drop for the month of March, and they expect about 15% drop for the month of April, when the April is closed out. That indicates a major drop in the global economic activity. All of us know this because most of us are in shelter-in-place orders or recommendations from the individual states that we are in. If you are here in the United States, if you are in Europe, you have a similar situation in France, in Italy, in UK, in the rest of the Europe, in Germany. So you know why this is happening, but it's very, the demand shock is very severe. Now, to understand how severe really the demand shock is, if you look at the contraction of 10% drop in the March in economic activity, it took during the 2008 to 2009, that would sometimes call the Great Recession, it took 18 months for that to occur. So 18 months was the period over which the economic activity, global economic activity, dropped by 10% back in 2008-2009 timeframe. We had achieved that in just a month. So it's a fairly severe situation in terms of a demand shock. Basically, all of this economic activity drop indicates that the global demand for goods and services has gone down dramatically, some industries more than the others, and we'll look at those in a moment. The next one is the second shock, which is the supply shock. So on the left-hand side, you see here a graphics from The Economist. This is The Economist issue late February, where they try to assess the COVID-19 risk to manufacturing. This is based on Goldman Sachs research and a couple of other sources. You'll find the link right there. You'll find the link right here, so you can go and check out the Economist article. It rates from medium versus high risk. And what's interesting here is the x-axis is inventory buffer in terms of days of supply. I can see here that apparel, retail have 20 to 30 days of supply, so does high-tech. Automotive, pharma, slightly longer, 40 days of supply. Not more, much of the days of supply is more than a month and a half. This is because by design, in general, across the globe, the supply chains have moved to lean manufacturing model. They have moved to just-in-time inventory. which means they have squeezed out all the excess inventory in the world's global supply chain, which is a very good thing from a cost perspective in regular times, but especially in the COVID-19 pandemic, that makes it very serious. On the right-hand side, you see three different pieces of news. The first one is related to global automotive industry, which pretty much shut down production in March across the board. They were hoping to open up in mid to late April, and many of those plans have been pushed to May. I really hope that we have at least 30 to 40% of the automotive capacity coming back online next month in May, and then should be in a gradual fashion. But it also shows that one of the largest industries that we have, in addition to travel, transportation, hotel, entertainment, and everything else, we got the supply shock on the automotive industry, for example, and all the entire supply chain that's dependent on it. Following that, then you see the news about Apple. Apple is one of the best-run supply chains in the world. They plan for all contingencies. At least they try to. Wall Street Journal reported this just a couple of days back on Monday, that Apple will delay the mass production of its iPhone, the new iPhone models. Last but not the least, and this is especially relevant for the United States, is that the meat factories in the United States are experiencing shutdowns. And Tyson Foods CEO made this statement. He said the food supply chain is breaking because of COVID-19 pandemic. Again, all the problems that people are actively working on solutions for. So these are not to just say that all hope is lost. Certainly not. We will work through this one like we have worked through every other situation. But it's important to understand the extent to which both demand and supply have been affected by the COVID-19 pandemic. So what does that mean in terms of as banks, as financial services institutions, as governments, especially governments dealing with policies that are related to making sure that the economic institutions are stable, the economy is stable, the supply of money is stable? What are the three key vulnerabilities that are caused by this demand shock and supply shock? Let's go through those one by one. The first one is related to small businesses. And small businesses are important everywhere, but especially here in the United States, is because 65%, 2 out of 3 new jobs are created by small businesses. It's the engine of economic growth for the United States. It's also engine of economic growth for places like India, like China, like even most of Europe. That's the case. So that's the reason why small business stability is important. The second point relates to that the supply chain gets disrupted, the manufacturing slows down or shuts down. There is a lot of debt that has been accumulated by manufacturers, by distributors, by retailers. This debt is something that's a big worry because it's at the highest level, even more than the level was at the Great Recession, and the debt has to be serviced, which means there are payments on that debt that are due, and there is no production to pay for it. The third one has to do with unemployment, and this has to do with a rise in short-term unemployment and the household debt that's related to that. You'll remember the 2008-2009 crisis was related to the mortgage derivatives. Derivatives are not essentially bad or good. Derivatives are a way to securitize a debt, which means if you want to take a debt and distribute the risk associated with that in an equitable manner, then you create different what are called tranches or slices of that debt. Let's look at the business debt for a moment, and this is the model that we'll drill down into in today's with a live demonstration and on TigerGraph's Graph Studio and TigerGraph Cloud. So a business owner, there's a bunch of business owners that are here on the left-hand side. This could be restaurant owners, hotel owners, this could be transportation industry, a host of different types of businesses that have business loans. Each business has a business loan. So business owner 1 has business loan 1, owner 2 has loan 2, and so on and so forth. Multiple of these loans typically are combined into what is called collateralized debt obligation, CDO pool. It's also called CLO, sometimes collateralized loan obligation or CLO, or collateralized debt obligation, CDO. Then that is essentially securitized into multiple tranches or slices of debt. This is what I mentioned securitization earlier. All of you that are from financial services industry know this, but if somebody is new to this, I'm explaining this in the benefit of keeping everybody up to date. So there are different levels of risk rating associated. So for example, this particular tranche or slice of the debt is rated AAA, which means it's the lowest risk, and correspondingly the reward on that, which is the yield or the coupon rate is the rate that's listed on the, let's say I'll give you 5% for 100 units of this debt. Usually the AAA debt basically means that the risk is low and therefore the yield is low. The interest rate that you get from it is low. Now, when you come to the middle, that is the debt that's typically assumed to be from businesses that are still good, but businesses that are not excellent in terms of their credit ratings. So this particular tranche is meant to represent a higher rate of return. For example, it might be 6.5%, 7% rate of return as opposed to 5% for a AAA debt tranche. But the difference mainly is in case of default, remember, this is business owner 1 through 5, and typically there are hundreds of business owners that are part of a particular debt pool. There might be out of 100 different business owners that are part of a particular debt pool. There might be 40 that have excellent credit ratings. And those people are the ones that pay their debt on time. They pay their business loan installment on time. So, and then the next 30, 40 might be the good ones who sometimes pay on time. Sometimes they are a few week or two late, but they usually pay. And then last 20% might be the riskiest of them all, where they pay sometimes 30 days, 60 days, 90 days late. Sometimes they go into a default. So essentially this securitization model is meant to distribute the risk so that the AAA debt holders always get paid first, right? The ones with the highest rated debt, with the lowest risk rating or highest rating of the debt in terms of quality, like AAA rating, would get paid the first. If there are defaults, then whatever is left after the AAA debt is paid, tranche is paid, will be paid to this middle tranche. And then whatever is left in at the end of it will be paid to an equity tranche or the lowest ranked. And sometimes this middle one is called mezzanine, and this is called junior. So the AAA debt will be called the senior debt. This one in the middle is called the mezzanine tranche, and this one is called the junior. There are different terminologies depending on which financial services institutions you're talking about and which rating agencies you're talking about. But the idea is same. There's a high quality, there's a medium quality, and there's a low quality. And then that each of the tranches, highest quality tranche has the lowest yield but gets paid first in case of a default. Then the medium quality will get paid, and then the lowest quality will get paid. Since for many, many years, this is the way this has worked, and it works really, really well in normal times. I will explain why this requires a careful examination of a different risk model or an enhanced risk model in the current times in just a moment. So that's the first risk. As economy slows down, as if the shelter in place extends well far beyond May, June into July, August, consider the business owners that own restaurants, that own transportation, that own leisure industry related businesses. All of these people are going to be struggling to pay back their business loans. Of course, there is a program called from SBA, Small Business Administration, for COVID-19 relief. But the critical part to understand that over $300 billion of that program that was released earlier this month got consumed in about 6 days. The next tranche is released now, and let's see how long it lasts. But we are looking at unprecedented amount of disaster recovery required for these people to keep paying their employees and stay in business. The next one I mentioned here, this shows on the left-hand side, this is a Graph Studio supply chain screenshot. We have also a supply chain brief. You can find it on tigergraph.com/resources. But what it's showing here is a automotive manufacturer's very simplified supply chain. Actual supply chain is more complex than that. But for the sake of example, it's showing different parts of the supply chain. Not just the original OEM manufacturer, but each of their suppliers, their tier 1 suppliers, their tier 2 supplier, all the way through their tier 7 suppliers. Everybody is dependent on producing and paying for the debt that they have accumulated to create the factory, to pay the workers, to pay the insurance, to pay the mortgage, which is the real estate mortgage for their factory and their warehouses and so on and so forth. Now, if you look at the amount of debt that they have accumulated, even before COVID-19, if you look at end of 2018, early 2019, last year around this time, the debt had already exceeded 46.4%, nearly half of the GDP. It's expected that the debt would continue to balloon well past 55-60% level by the time the crisis is over, this pandemic is over. What that means essentially is excessive debt associated with businesses that are not able to produce, at least temporarily, because of the pandemic. So that presents a major risk for the financial services institutions in the second form, and that has to be assessed properly. The third one that's related to people like you and me, related to short-term unemployment spike that's expected in the United States. Again, you see the similar structure here. All of us are homeowners, so we own a home. There's a mortgage associated with that home. That mortgage is built into a mortgage pool. And again, you see the terms that I mentioned earlier, which is you have a senior tranche, which is the highest rated in terms of quality and lowest in terms of risk, also low in terms of yield. Mezzanine, which is middle, and then junior, which is the least quality but usually yields much higher interest rate. So the Goldman Sachs prediction, and this is the one as of April 14th, is that the second quarter activity is likely going to drop by 35%, and unemployment could hit 15%. The sharp recovery is certainly possible in the second half of 2020, but it's dependent on things getting back to normal, and that's the key. Regardless of what happens, there's massive mortgages that are associated with people, and as people look at furloughs, they look at job losses, that becomes a significant risk. So with that in mind, let's look at the first model that we're going to explore here. I'm going to briefly explain the model, and then I'll switch over to a live demonstration where we'll actually walk through the product. I'm going to explain the model here real quick, what we have built out. So right here you have the portfolio. This could be a particular portfolio within a bank. Could be the financial institution's portfolio. There's a specific account within that portfolio. Then within an account, there are what I call CDO, or collateralized debt obligation tranches, that are owned by that particular account. Typically, a tranche would have a debt quality, like, it's a high quality debt, it's a medium quality debt, it's a low quality debt, and then debt rating, which is associated like AAA rating, BBB rating, BB rating, or B rating, and so on and so forth. So this multiple CDO tranches are typically owned by an account. That particular tranche belongs to a loan pool, so a pool set of business loans in this case, because we're looking at the business loan related scenario. Then multiple business loans that are part of this particular loan pool, they are all pooled together to distribute the risk. That business loan is typically owned by a particular business. And till here, what you see to the right of the business is all the standard stuff that you have already in place in your organization. There's nothing new about it. What's new is the stuff on up here and on the left-hand side. So let me explain this one by one, what the model is. The business is either eligible for the SBA, which is Small Business Administration. EIDL is Economic Injury Disaster Recovery Loan, and COVID-19. I could have just said COVID-19 loan, but the official name is SBA, Small Business Administration. EIDL, which is Economic Injury Disaster Recovery Loan for COVID-19. So either you are eligible for that loan or you are not. And that's a very important thing to understand, because some businesses, contractors, for example, are not eligible. Not all of them are eligible for this particular loan. So even if you are a small business, that doesn't necessarily mean that you are eligible for it. So either you are eligible for it, and of course, if you are eligible for it, have you been granted the loan? Did you get it as a part of the first set of loans that were granted? Have you applied for the second one? Have you received the loan? All of those factors are additional factors that need to be considered to see whether this business can continue to operate. Okay. The next one from the business side is what is called Paydex rating. So this Paydex rating score is issued by Dun & Bradstreet. Dun & Bradstreet is one of the major business rating agencies, information and rating agencies in the United States. Europe has equivalent of that. India has similar stuff. Paydex essentially is similar to a consumer has a FICO score. When you and I apply for a home mortgage or a credit card or an automobile loan, loan to buy a car, loan to buy a home, any loan, basically, we have a FICO score. Much like the FICO score, the Dun & Bradstreet issues for every business a Paydex score. So looking at the Paydex rating can tell you how good the business is. Now, the interesting part to understand here is Paydex scores for many of the businesses in hotel, in transportation industry, in restaurant industry were quite good before COVID-19 pandemic. What's happening with the shrinking of the demand and all of the things that are going around COVID-19 in terms of shutdown is that this particular Paydex rating hasn't been still updated to reflect the COVID-19 impact. So the reason why we are looking at this in this model is to understand what the current Paydex rating is based on history, and then what's likely to happen based on the risk. What is the risk? When the business is in a particular industry, like restaurant, casual dining restaurant or fine dining restaurant, that's a high-risk industry. So an industry, business is part of a particular industry like restaurant or casual dining restaurant or a fine dining restaurant, and then that particular industry has a COVID-19 risk. We've kept the risk model very simple in this at high risk, medium risk, and low risk. You can go more granular in your own model if you want to. You certainly can. We just thought that we'll keep it simple for the sake of exercise here. The other risk that you have for a business is physically located in a particular county. For example, my home is in San Ramon. There are a lot of restaurants here in San Ramon. That's Contra Costa County, right? If you go down to Los Angeles, there's a county there called San Bernardino County. Each of this county has a COVID-19 risk associated with it. We'll review where the data is coming from in just a moment, but there's a risk associated with a particular county also. Then for a particular state, there's a high-risk state, like New York, for example, like Michigan, even California. So there's a risk associated with a particular state as well. So all of these risk factors have to be factored in, whether the business loans that are part of this particular pool, how many of those businesses are affected by are a high-risk industry, are located in a high-risk county, are located in a high-risk state, and are not eligible, for example, for SBA loan. So the ones that are in a high-risk industry, high-risk county, high-risk state, still the factor that reduces the risk somewhat is the SBA loan, right? That $10,000 loans that the businesses are getting. Of course, it's a short-term relief, but at least that there's a little bit of a relief there. If they don't qualify for that as well, then the risk is even higher. So this is what I mean by new factors have to be considered when you're building the risk model. Now, where did the risk by state come in? So this is the risk by state of number of cases across multiple states. So what we essentially did was to say above a particular threshold, everything is a high risk state. Between the middle band of cases, active cases as well as total cases is the medium risk, and then really low number of cases like Hawaii, for example, and North Dakota, South Dakota tend to be low risk states. So that's how we are gauging the COVID-19 risk. Here is one that was pulled together by MIT. They are part of the COVID-19 Policy Alliance. So this is when you consider a particular state, within that, how do you rate individual counties? That's what this is about. So this is showing you COVID-19 Policy Alliance dashboard. You can see the risk link right here. So when you get this deck, you can click on it and explore it yourself if you like. This is showing for California, which are the major counties at risk. So all of these counties, Yuba County, Stanislaus County, San Joaquin County, San Bernardino County, which is in the Los Angeles area I mentioned, all of these are high risk because they are the highest risk, number 6. What we have done is 6 and 5 typically we have considered as high, and then of course 4 and 3 as low, as medium, and then 1 and 2 as low. So again, we have simplified the model because we wanted to make sure that you have an easy model to start with, but you can, of course, expand and make it as complex as you like, and I'll go into nuances of that when I explain the queries and other things when you get to the demo. The next one is rating risk by industry. Again, we have used here McKinsey's research. It's an excellent piece of research. It's open, available to public. It's not gated. So you can, when you get this link, you can click on this. McKinsey estimates that across all of these industries, about 44 to 57 million jobs are vulnerable in short term. So these are the high risk industries, things like accommodation, which is hotels, food services, retail trade, construction businesses, government businesses, manufacturing businesses, and so on and so forth. Those are high-risk businesses. Then in the medium-risk businesses, you get to more along the lines of wholesale trade and educational services. They are going to be affected, but not as much. And of course, the lower ones are the essential ones, like utilities, gas. You still need those. Agriculture, forestry, fishing. Some of these are mandated through government regulations, and therefore they don't get affected as much through COVID-19 risk. Last thing to understand is about Paydex score from Dun & Bradstreet. So I mentioned that some of these restaurants, these hotels, have had spectacular Paydex score ratings, and we'll look at the data when we see it in a moment. Between 80 and 100, you have like this spectacular rating. So 100 basically means you pay on average many times 30 days sooner than the payment is due, whether it's payment for the loan or payment to your suppliers. 90 score typically means payment comes in about 20 days sooner. 80 means payment comes on time. So 80 to 100 is, you are paying on time or better. Between 50 and 80 is where you start to get into 15 days delayed, 22 days or 3 weeks, and 30 days delayed. And then 40 and beyond, 1 to 40 is where things are really late. I mean, 20 to 40 is where things are in trouble, and then below 20 is really poor rating. The reason why I've included that in here is because, as you'll see the data, some of the Paydex scores are really high, but those are scores that are pre-COVID-19 pandemic. And that's why let's switch over now to look at actually the demonstration. I'm going to switch my browser into Graph Studio for us to look at. So remember, I mentioned the data model. I'm not going to spend the time again to explain the data model, but you got the portfolio, you have the account. An account has one or more CDO, collateralized debt obligation tranches, that has a debt quality and that has a debt rating. It's part of a loan pool, loan pool that the tranche comes from. The business loans, multiple business loans are grouped together as a part of a pool. A business owns a particular business loan. A business is either eligible for the loan or they are not. A business has a Paydex rating associated with it, and whether it could be a high Paydex, or it could be medium, it could be low, and then there'll actually be a score. On the business, there are attributes like Dunn's number, which is Dun and Bradstreet number. Again, you'll have equivalent of that in Europe, in India. It'll be a different number. You have a Paydex actual score between 1 and 100, and then there'll be typically a description for the business. In terms of county, of course, the county that the business belongs to, and then there's an industry that the business belongs to. County belongs to a particular state, and all of these, right here you see COVID-19 risk, and industry, a county, as well as the state has a direct COVID-19 risk rating that we looked at. So now let's go into the data set. So in the data set, I have individual CSV files here that are already pre-mapped out, and then we have mapped those with, for example, industry COVID-19 risk CSV. This one has by industry either high, medium, or low. So if I drill down into it, right, to look at it, I can go here to this panel, and I can go to industry COVID-19 risk. And if I look at this one, this particular file, I can see here restaurants have a high risk, hotels have a high risk, automotive repair has a high risk, cleaning services have a high risk because because of social distancing, people can't go into somebody's home and clean it. Grocery have a low risk associated. Quick service restaurants are neither here nor there. They're medium because most of their business was drive-through, so they are still doing okay. For example, In-N-Out Burger in my hometown of San Ramon has a line longer than any other line that I've ever seen in my entire life. Gas stations have a high risk because people are not traveling as much, so gas stations are empty. Internet businesses, technology businesses, software businesses have a low risk. Now, even though software and internet and technology businesses have low risk, it's important to understand that they rely on the traditional businesses to buy software. So as those get affected, eventually the risk will trickle up. But in general, so far the impact has been low. So all of these files have been loaded in here already. And then what I'm going to do is load up the data by having that data loaded in. So when I go ahead and load up the latest data set that I have, it's going to take only a few seconds to load that back up. And once we do that, we'll start exploring and looking at going into Explore Graph and starting to look at some of the things that we want to check out. So let's start with a particular portfolio here maybe. Looks like my loading is done. So let's go ahead and look at a particular portfolio. And I'm going to start with, let's say, portfolio 1 that I want to check. So starting with the portfolio 1, what I can do here, and let me minimize this particular pane so I can see more of the screen here. Now, portfolio 1 has multiple accounts in it, as you can see. So you have about 10 different accounts in it. What I'm going to do is I'm going to explore one of these accounts. So I'm going to take this account and I'm going to double click on this to see what CDO tranches are part of this. Now it's going to get very busy with all the other different accounts, so I'm going to just limit to show only the selection, just the account that we have that we want to look at. So as you can look at, there are different tranches that are owned by this particular account. There are several tranches, and as I look around and as I look at these tranches, I'm curious now what the different debt rating associated with the tranches. So let's say I decide to expand one particular tranche. I can look at this one. This has a maturity date of October 15th, 2020. It's got a yield rate of 4.66%, coupon rate of 5.65%. Price of 12,100, and the tranche fraction, this is an important part. As a part of the debt pool that it belongs to, the tranche fraction is 0.7, which means this contains 70% roughly of the debt that's contained in here. Now let me go ahead and drill down in this one, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to drill down, and as I drill down, I'm going to hide the rest of the tranches here because I'm focusing on one particular tranche. So as I'm looking at one particular tranche here, I see the quality of the debt, which is a senior quality debt, which means it's an excellent, highest quality debt. It's got a AAA rating. which is excellent quality debt, which is very good. Now I see that it's attached to a loan pool here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take a moment to drill down further into this particular loan pool. Again, in the interest of just keeping things clean, I'm just going to only show selections here. So I'm going to look at all the different things that are part of this particular loan pool. So I can see here that there are different businesses that are part of this particular loan pool. So it looks like there are about 10 businesses that are part of this particular loan pool 1, 2, 3, 4 through 10. So now the interesting part is, remember, the tranche that we were looking at originally had 70% senior quality debt, AAA quality debt, which means all the businesses associated out of this, at least roughly 70% of that debt has to be good quality debt. Now let's look at a couple of these things to understand what the quality of the debt is associated with this. So I'm going to take the business loan 1, for example, and I'm going to double click on this just to understand what is the business that is business loan 1. As I start to drill down more into this, I start to look at it, I see that it's OSF International. That's a short form for the Old Spaghetti Factory International in Concord, California, right? As I start to drill down on the Concord, California, I realize that this particular business is in the restaurant industry. It's located in a Contra Costa County, and this particular business has a Paydex rating, which is a high Paydex rating. And if I look at the business attributes for a moment, I see a DUNS number for them. I see a Paydex score of 85, which is excellent. Anything above 80 is excellent score. So the Old Spaghetti Factory in Concord is doing really well in terms of paying back their debt. So now as I look at this particular industry, let me drill down on the industry to see whether it's and I see here that this is a high-risk industry. And not only that, there are other businesses that are part of this particular debt pool. Remember, there were a business 1, business 2, business 3, business 4. Those are also part of the restaurant industry, and they are all high risk. They are part of the high risk industry. So even if the Paydex rating is very high for business 1, and let's look at business 2. If you look at business 2, again, it has a high Paydex rating right now, but it's located in an industry that's very, very high risk for COVID-19. So you have to consider that factor, and you have to re-rate this particular debt to reassess its risk associated with that debt. As I start to drill down more and more, if I start to drill down, for example, this particular business 2, which is in Santa Clara County, if I double-click on this county, I realize that, oh my God, this county is also a high-risk county within California for COVID-19. So as I start to look at this, a different risk picture emerges than the one that was shown just by this static rating of Paydex, which is looking back. So if you're looking at Paydex rating alone, it's like driving with looking in your rear view mirror. What you need to do is look at the forward view of what's likely to happen, because these restaurants, these are all restaurants. They are a high-risk industry. They are located in California, which is a high-risk state. Clearly, this requires a different approach to look at it. Remember, I mentioned San Bernardino County. San Bernardino County, again, is located in California, so it's Santa Clara County, which is Silicon Valley. Both of those have high risk of COVID-19. Again, you see here several businesses that are part of the San Bernardino County, and they are all part of this particular tranche. So business 1 through 10, most of these appear to be in high-risk industry of restaurants. They all have nice Paydex ratings right now, but it may not remain the same. In the interest of time, I'm just going to briefly cover the queries here, and I'm going to leave you as an exercise to look at it rest later. So there are 2 queries that are there. You can write any number of queries. I've written some simple queries here to illustrate the point. The first thing what I'm going to do is, this is a query that takes in a particular account and tries to relate it to a particular type of risk, the COVID-19 risk, for example. And then this particular one, it takes in an account, takes in a particular risk level. Let's go ahead and run this one and see what kind of risk is associated with a particular account. So to start to look at it, I'm going to put in account, remember account 11 was the account we were looking at, and then I'm going to try to see how it relates to high risk. So I want to understand account 11, all the different tranches in that account, all the different loan pools that the tranches are part of, all the business loans that are part of those loan pools. I want to see what the connection between this and a high risk of COVID-19 is. If I look at it, I can see here, I'm going to maximize the screen for you to see that there is a significant portion of account 1 that's related to high risk of COVID-19. You can see COVID-19 in the center here. And what it shows you is that high number of businesses are linked to either through industry or through the county that they're in or the state that they're in or all of those. They are linked to a high risk of COVID-19. So this particular account, it had tranches that are considered to be very, very high level quality. It's likely that those tranches are now have to be downgraded in terms of risk based on new picture that has emerged. So this is just an example of a type of query that you can write. I will send out the link to this so you can check out the query yourself. I'm not going to walk through the GSQL today. But the whole idea is you can write queries like this which take a particular account. You need to understand when you write this particular query, remember the number of levels or hops that you have to go through. And this is all being done in real time by Tagegraph. You're going from a particular account. You're going to individual tranches of collateralized debt within that account. Then you're going to the loan pool that the tranche is part of. Then from loan pool, you're going to the individual business loans. From business loans, you're going to the business. From there, you're going to the industry, county, and the state, and then assessing risk across all of these, linking it back to a high risk of COVID-19 and calculating all of that stuff in real time. And this is a toy data set, but we can do this in real time for when you have tens of millions or billions of loans that are part of your graph. So the number of hops is from account to tranche, first hop, from tranche to loan pool, second hop, from loan pool to individual business loan, third hop, from business loan to business, fourth hop, to county, fifth hop, and to the risk, sixth hop. Same thing for this route. And the hops for this thing is even longer, this 7-hop assessment of risk. This is what you really need as a sophisticated risk management solution if you are serious about assessing your risk associated in your portfolio. With that, let me open up questions and see if there are any questions, David.
Yeah, that was an awesome demonstration graph. I like the way that you combine multiple different data sets. And then with that in place, you then go deep into the data, 5 hops or even 10 hops to then uncover the risk of a loan default based on COVID-19. Very interesting. I have not seen this before. We have a few questions from the audience. One here is, what are you doing in Tagegraph to model risk that can't be done in a standard relational database?
Excellent question. In a relational database, if you look at just constructing this model, just on the left-hand side or the right-hand side, you have so many joins that have to be done, right? You have to take the account table, you have to join that with CDO tranche table, take the CDO tranche table, join that with loan pool, join loan pool with business loans with business information onto the county, state, and industry information. So it becomes a complex star join situation, which takes a long amount of time, and then the amount of risk assessment that you have to run through every time there is a change. For example, a particular county has extended their shelter in place. A particular state has extended their shelter in place. That's an impact that you need to assess immediately. You'll have to run through all of these database joins in relational database. In Tagegraph, you don't need to do any joins because the information is pre-connected. So all you need to do is bring in new information, such as the business's eligibility for the SBA loan or the shelter-in-place order being extended for a particular state or another type of external impact, and you can literally, in a matter of seconds, recompute the risk associated with your portfolio. Why is this important? Time is money, and risk management related to your portfolio basically means you know sooner the answers to your question, what's impacted in my portfolio, and you can take corrective actions to address that.
Great, thanks. Another question we have is, how do I add new risk elements to the model? How do I add new risk elements to the model?
Excellent question. So it's as simple as, in terms of modeling, it's very straightforward. Let's take an example. Let's say I want to add a new risk, a risk associated with it. Maybe I want to call it, I'm just going to call it new risk element, right? Whatever the element is. All you can do is simply add that into the model, and then wherever the data source is for this new risk element, right, link it up to the original model with whether it's a new risk for a particular business, and then let's say that's the edge, and I'm going to say the edge name is very uninventive at this point, new risk element to business, right? And that's it. You have enhanced your model. I'm really serious. That's really as simple as that is. And then all you have to do is import that data. You can import it as JSON objects. You can import it as CSV files. You can do computational risk element, which is something that I didn't get into. What you can do is based on the complex risk profile that you have here. For example, give 1 point if a particular business resides in a county that is high risk, or say 5 points for a high risk county, 3 points for a medium risk county, and 1 point for a low risk county, right? If they are located in an industry that's high risk, 5 points for high risk industry, 3 points for medium risk industry, and 1 point for low risk, for example. Same thing for state. As you start to add those points up, you can easily compute the score here, and you can keep on updating. And if the new risk element that has come in has, let's say, COVID-19 reoccurrence, that means a second wave of COVID-19 breakout, that is more dangerous because the strain is more virulent and it's drug resistant, for example. I hope that doesn't happen, but I'm just giving that as an example. So if you have a second wave of COVID-19 for counties and cities and states that were previously deemed safe, that new risk element could be imported here, and you could factor that in to say, if this particular county, this particular state has a second occurrence or the second wave is part of the second wave, then make sure that you give 10 points, add 10 points to the risk for the businesses located in that particular county and in that particular state. That is a way to add up risk quantitatively, and of course you can adjust the numbers and the risk models. What this will do for you, because Tiger Graph is a native parallel graph, is it can recompute things for you. You can adjust your model, you can adjust your weightage, and it will recompute things for you on the fly as you import them. So it's not like relational database where you have to go to a database admin and say, add this table for me, and then they have to optimize all the indexes and everything. Everything happens automatically here. You don't have to do anything. As a data scientist, you simply create the new risk element, you attach it either here, or if you don't, it's not attached to the business. For example, this new risk element is related to a second wave of COVID-19 breakout, and it's associated with a particular county. Then you say county risk, right, for new infections. And for example, this particular name, I'm just going to change that from new risk element name to second wave COVID-19 pandemic. That makes sense? So what you're doing essentially is you're introducing a new risk element, and then you're attaching that to a particular county, and you're saying these counties have a second wave of COVID-19 breakout, and therefore I'm going to rate them differently, and then use that information. I should probably make this a directed edge. Because it's a directed relationship. But that's what this is. It's very, very simple to model this, And especially coming from the relational world, me included, I was shocked to see how easy it is to use Graph Studio to use this. I'm a veteran at relational databases past 24 plus years. I've been dealing with Graph database for the past 10 years. When I saw TigerGraph's interface 2.5 years back, I was floored, and it's gotten better since. So anyway, try it out yourself, and do let me know. The way to reach me is very easy. It's Gaurav, Gaurav, at tigergraph.com.
Two more questions, Gaurav, before we wrap up. The next one is, how do I use the risk management graph model with the machine learning platform? How do I use the risk management graph model with the machine learning platform?
I was hoping somebody would ask that question. So about 60% of our deployments have us feeding a machine learning model. We do two things related to machine learning. One is we do in-database machine learning. So we can actually do things like community of clusters, cluster detection. For example, there's a COVID-19 starter kit on TigerGraph Cloud. So I'm just going to go there for a moment and show it to you. Not the starter kit itself, just going to show you where the starter kits are located. The starter kits are all at tigergraph.com/starter kits, fairly easy URL. These starter kits essentially contain a graph schema, a data set, and a set of queries. So right here, you'll see that there's a COVID-19 analysis starter kit where you can see the in-database machine learning. So we do in-database machine learning for various of these starter kits. We can do community detection. We can do PageRank, which is identifying the influencers. In case of COVID-19, for example, you can identify who was the spreader, super spreader, that gave COVID-19 infection to a lot of people. You could do the same thing for economic analysis, risk analysis, where you can understand which are the most riskiest elements within my portfolio that are causing the most amount of damage, and then we can take actions to correct that. So we do in-database machine learning like PageRank, like community detection, like similarity matching, that's in database. The other thing we do is we do feature generation. So back to this schema, we can generate features around the businesses and generate complex features based on graph analysis to say whether they are related in an industry that's related to COVID-19 risk, whether they are related to a county that's has a COVID-19 risk, and so on and so forth. You can develop individual features, and these individual graph-generated features that are relationship-based are then fed into an ML platform that will make your risk prediction a lot better. So we do in-database machine learning for several algorithms, and we are one of the fastest in the world for doing that. And then we also generate machine learning features that are fed into your ML platform for improving risk management for your machine learning.
Perfect. And last question here is, can you write a scoring algorithm that combines new COVID-19 risks and updates the historic risk score automatically, with emphasis on automatically? Can you write?
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. We can. That's a slightly longer conversation, I'm afraid. So I will offer you, again, contact us. You can contact us at salesdev, SALESDEV, salesdev at tigergraph.com. Or send me a note, Gaurav, Gaurav at tigergraph.com. And then we will set up a briefing for you, and we'll get into details of this. We do this for fraud detection right now. We do this for several other use cases. We can easily set this up for you for risk management, automated risk management, and even that would trigger on its own based on certain circumstances. So we can walk through this and show you how we can automate the risk management process for you. This is what we have done for fraud, we have done for AML, money laundering, and we are in the process of, we do it for healthcare companies for COVID-19, dealing with that, and we'd love to do work with more banks on COVID-19 analysis related to managing the risk to your portfolio. We'll show you how to set up that those rules in a matter of days.
Good answers. I think in interest of time, Gaurav, why don't we move forward and wrap things up? I'll just show my screen. Okay, great. So if you have more questions, feel free to reach out to that URL or that email address that Gaurav just mentioned, salesdev@tigergraph.com. Additionally, for more expansive conversations on a wide variety of topics, you can join our developer forum. Please note the URL there. It has changed recently. You can also join our developer chat, and we're doing that on Discord. And then every Wednesday at 11 o'clock Pacific time, we have our developer hours, and you can sign up for that at the URL shown. As we've mentioned, we will send an email to everybody shortly after this webinar ends, and you'll have this PowerPoint deck, and you can click on these URLs. You don't have to memorize them or make a note of them right now. We have a variety of additional resources. Graph gave a very thorough run through of TigerGraph Cloud. One of the cool things about TigerGraph Cloud is it's free to get started. It just takes a few minutes, about 5 or 6 minutes. And did I say it's free? We have a wide variety of starter kits. I think 22 at the last count. The value of these starter kits, Graph just showed one, is that it makes it easy for you to get started. So you're not having to look at a blank screen and think, well, what do I do next? You can take an existing starter kit pre-populated with schema and data and so forth, get familiar with that, and then you can make modifications to take it in a different direction as you see fit. We also have a variety of test drive demos online. You can also, if you want, download a developer edition. And we have a variety of graphs of Guru scripts on GitHub. Last but not least, we have another webinar tomorrow. We're doing this one with Data Science Central. It's at 9 o'clock Pacific time. It's COVID related. It talks about how graph algorithms, machine learning, and our COVID-19 analysis are helping to save the world. Maybe a little bit of a bold claim. Why don't you join the webinar and see if you think it's bold or if it's justified. The URL is shown there. And then I think everybody on this call is aware, we do a webinar every Wednesday. Next week, we're going to go back to our 11 o'clock slot. Next week's webinar is a very interesting one. Well, they're all interesting, but this one is with an outside speaker, Tony Baer, who is a principal at DB Insight, and he'll be talking about how graph databases complement your data warehouse. Again, next Wednesday at 11. And then finally, as I mentioned at the top, I know people are generally very busy. I think one consequence of the coronavirus pandemic is that some of us are busier than ever. So, but regardless, we're always very happy that you've made time on your calendar to join us. We hope you found the last hour to be a productive one. We hope you found the webinar to be insightful. I certainly thought the demonstration was excellent. And we want to thank you for attending, and we look forward to seeing you at a future webinar, either tomorrow or next Wednesday, or at a future webinar in May and June and so forth. But for now, thank you for attending, and please stay safe.